joining us via LinkedIn, so welcome all of you online, welcome all of you here. This is COP29. We all came here with high hopes, not for more promises and commitments, but for real implementation of climate action. The question obviously is there a gap between the commitments, the promises, and what is happening on the ground? Because we all know globally the emissions are still going up. So we're here to talk about how do we close that gap between the commitments on one side, whether it's in business, whether it's from governments, and the action on the ground. And in particular today we want to focus about the role that metrics, regulation, international standards can play in that space. We have an amazing panel. I'll introduce them in a second. But before I do that, we thought it would be really good to start with one of the governments to hear what governments think of this particular topic. And I'm really, really pleased and honored to have Mr. Guy Bonvin. I hope I pronounced that okay, Guy. He's the deputy head of the Swiss delegation of the mission and collaboration, cooperation. A lot of roles, a lot of hats, but he made a few minutes available to be with us, so over to you, Mr. Bonvin.
Yes, good morning to all of you. So just to correct, I'm the deputy head of mission, of the embassy here in Baku, and member of the delegation as well. So thank you, Mr. Moderator. It's all right? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So I'm very pleased to be here with you, and thank very much the organizer for welcoming here. COP29 is really in a critical moment, of course, to mobilize the financing, but as you said, also to find a way to concretely implement the discussion of the high level. Switzerland, as you know, is a very open economy, so very looking at all international standards and reliability of those standards. And climate mitigation is a global challenge, so it needs also to mobilize finance. This is why we are here. And to mobilize private and public finance, we need also convincing metrics. The official, the public party, but the private party as well, convincing metrics to measure the way to the goal. And it's by far not easy, be a bank, be an industrial, be whoever. So here we are discussing today this importance of the traceability of the implementation, and also to discuss what is actually a daily challenge. And I am speaking here with the different hats I have, a daily challenge of data measurement, validation, credibility of data, verification, methodology, acumen of measurement of progress. And I can tell you some conversation already yesterday where I am taking part. This is a big question, how data are reliable, how you document the finance, how you document the progress. And I think this is an important part of the effort, and of course ISO is a very important standard for that. And if I go very concretely in a discussion where we are discussing about funds, we are different ways. At the end of the day, as we say in French, the devil is in the details. Where we are checking what is happening, how it is documented, and how, of course, if you look also the perspective of the trade, there are different national standards, different metrics in different parts of the world, and the importance here is the comparability, because different countries have different statements, and we see the argument in the discussion, and of course there are different metrics, but also the interface between those metrics. The interoperability of how you measure low emission technology, industry standards, and of course with the aim of fostering investment in low carbon infrastructure, and of course also the trade, because trade at the end of the day should be consistent and documented between the countries. So with that, I wish you a very good start of the discussion, and I hope that we will find some not only common ground, but concrete solution. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Bonvin. I hope you can all hear us well in the room. That's fantastic, thank you. So, thank you for those supporting statements. So, like I said, we're really here to talk about how do we close the gap between the promises, the commitments, and the actual implementation of the solutions. And for many years in COPs, you would be in rooms where people would talk about new technologies, new solutions, but more and more we begin to realize that if we do not have a foundation of data, of metrics, of standards to make those metrics comparable, then we won't know which solution is more effective than the others. So like I said, I mean, I have no idea, there might be 1,000 panels this week in COP29, but you will be hard-pressed to find a better panel than we've been able to collect here, because all the major institutions are here on this panel. And now I will do my utmost best not to mess up their names. And I'm going to start with a really interesting one. Fabrizia Lapercorella, the Deputy Secretary General of the OECD, yeah. Secondly, Sergio Mujica, not bad, Secretary General of the ISO, I mean the host of this beautiful standards pavilion. And then last but not least, Jean-Marie Pogam, Deputy Director General of the WHO. WTO. So here we have WTO, ISO, and the OECD. If you want to talk about international standards, you cannot have a better panel. So what's the issue at hand? You know, how can regulation, metrics, and international standards help close that gap? In the world of these people, regulation standards is called QI. I don't know, maybe you are all well versed in it. I had to look it up this morning. It is the quality infrastructure systems. That is what we're talking about here. How can metrics and QI help close the gap? The OECD has done amazing work in IFCMA. Who here knows what IFCMA is?
Good.
Okay, there's one person, two, who know what it is. So I'll help you out. It's the Inclusive Forum for Carbon Mitigation Approaches. Started 2 years ago, Fabrizia will talk about it, and has now also worked on interoperable standards and metrics. So the real question is, how do we get these standards to work, and how do we make them internationally applicable? As we all know, we don't need more talk, we need implementation. And in implementation, that means every question has to start with how. So all my questions to my esteemed panel will start with how. So Fabrizia, the challenge, as I said, is data measurement. The demand for granular, accurate, time-sensitive, timely, carbon-intense metrics, how it links to policies, how it links to the real economy. Like I said, you've done amazing work in IFCMA. But how can quality infrastructure systems help the credibility and the comparability of the data? That works.
Well, thank you very much. Great questions. And let me, first of all, thank you, Sergio, for organizing this panel and for the invitation. But let me start by saying that it is, at this point in time where we see that we need to accelerate and that we are not on track with respect to achieving our objectives, closing the implementation gap is obviously key. Let me just say that we at the OECD are, striving for helping our members and also our non-members, partners in addressing this issue on a variety of dimensions. Because closing the implementation gap has, a variety of dimensions, of which measurement of the carbon content of products and products and sectors is obviously key. We are witnessing a genuine and increasing interest in the work we're doing in this space that in a sense surprises me, because to see that now people are starting. I was discussing this a second before. Now people start.
Look like there is an issue with the mic.
This. Can you?
Might be this one. Use the handout. Okay, I'll take this one.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay, good. Okay, so as I was saying, there's a growing interest in this issue, and that relates to the fact that carbon intensity metrics, the measurement of the carbon content of products and sectors, is now relevant for policies. It is the basis of many policies. It is extremely relevant for businesses. It's relevant for consumers. And this is why it is so important to actually understand what challenges we're faced with when calculating this metrics. Now, we have at the IFCMA, we have undertaken a review of all these challenges, and we have tried to identify possible solutions. We have it is clear that let's look at this from the policy perspective, because we're talking about implementation gap, and it's clear that what we need is a granular, accurate and timely, a measurement of the carbon intensity. But this goal obviously has serious costs. So the one important reflection is how to strike the best trade-off between granular, timely and accurate metrics and resource cost that is implied. And in this context, actually, we have been identifying. We've been looking also at the data gap, and we have been identifying, that the risks that are entailed by, the absence of primary data. When primary data that are needed for calculation, for calculating the carbon intensity are not there, one needs to resort to default values, and it is extremely important to actually have a common, understanding and common for these default values. We have also been recognizing that, as was said before, that carbon intensity metrics are different in different countries for different sectors, poses further challenges. It actually it has two immediate implications. It can have significant compliance costs for businesses, and it can actually have it can impact and hinder international trade. So what we need for that is actually, ideally, one should have common methods, for common standards, but we know very well how that is difficult. So that the right approach is actually to study the interoperability of standards. That relates to basically the possibility of using the underlying information in different measurement systems, and interoperability of standards is key to actually, can take us a long way towards reducing the compliance cost for business and for actually improving the effectiveness of policies. Different standards and the complexity of actually that is entailed by the measurement of carbon intensity has also very important implication for on equity grounds. Large businesses are much better equipped in dealing with the challenges posed by this measurement. There's small and medium enterprises, and we need to take that into account if we want, if we want to actually support a transition that is also just in these terms. The complexity in measurements also, obviously, is challenging for countries that are equipped with different technical capacity. So there is another equity dimension that is, that it relates to the different level of developments of the economy and the capacity building. And this calls for actually action for supporting capacity in this space if we want policies to be effective. And as you were suggesting, it is in this space that quality infrastructure systems are key. And what is actually needed is, because what is actually needed is an efficient international governance of to implement standards, to implement assurances, accreditation, and measurement. And the OECD actually is doing work in this area. We will publish a report on maybe I forgot to say that on carbon intensity metrics, we have just published a report, an IFCMA report that actually, details all the issues that I've briefly addressed. On quality measurements, we will publish a report. On quality infrastructure, we will publish a report in January 2025, looking at these systems in details, at the opportunities, at the challenges that this quality infrastructure system can offer to secure a consistent green transition. And what can this system do is to provide guidance on how to calculate and verify carbon intensity that is consistent, that is mutually recognized across countries, and that is, and in this space again, this is the space where IFCMA is making its greatest effort in, bringing forward, countries, more and more countries, to cooperate in this area.
Thank you very much. The lesson is that the moderator should never give up his microphone. So the gentleman, would you have to keep the transmitter out of your pocket on your lap, then it will work. But let me go over to Sergio. Sergio, as I said, Secretary General of ISO. Hey Sergio, also for you a challenge that is between the national level commitments, they're called NDCs here, and practical action in countries, there's a gap as well. So how can standards help transform these high-level commitments into actual action on the ground? What is your view on that?
Thank you. Can you hear me, first of all? Yeah, very good. So the key question is, how do we move from discussions to commitments, and then from commitments to actions, but even more importantly, from action to impact, which is what we want to achieve. And we believe that standards can be really instrumental on that, because they are globally recognized and accepted best practice that can go through all that journey actually to create actual impact. So the question is, how can we help in very concrete terms? And the first one is with our core business, with our standards. We have a huge portfolio of 25,000 standards, but of course I cannot give you that and tell you use them wisely. So we need to identify what is really impactful, and we have done that. And in particular, I like to mention the management standards, because we have very emblematic or flagship standards on quality management, energy management, environmental management, and so on, which is a step-by-step concrete guidance to all kind of organization, public sector, private sector, large corporation, SMEs, about how to translate those commitments into meaningful action. And that involves the whole company, the leadership level and also the operational level. So that is very specific. And then I need to mention something that we are all very proud of, which is our guidelines on net zero that we launched 2 years ago in Sharm el-Sheikh at the COP, where we can also support all those organizations to first define their commitments and also to accompany them step by step until they are able to deliver. So that's number one, what already exists. Please do not reinvent the wheel. We should not confuse people. We need to create clarity. That, I think, is our role as leaders, to create clarity for everyone to be able to comply with those commitments.
And when you say, please don't do that, who are you talking to?
Well, I'm talking to all of us, and I will come to that in a second. The second way we can help is by providing a platform to create new standards, because sometimes it is necessary. There are gaps, and it's not only the content of the standard, because the technical content, I would say, is the easy part. It's just bringing a couple of experts to my office in Geneva, and I can give you a new standard in 2-3 weeks. It doesn't work like that, because at the end of the day, it's about consensus decision-making, transparency, inclusiveness, and very importantly, giving a voice to developing countries. This cannot be a closed club of rich people. We need to really make sure that those developing countries have a voice. So that's number two, as I said, this trusted platform. Number three is with conformity assessment, because we need to have a mature system where we can verify compliance with those commitments, and also we can certify them, so we create trust in the whole ecosystem. And number four is precisely about your question. It's about meaningful and real partnership. Because we cannot work in isolation, but even worse, we cannot create more confusion to people. How do we do it? I think we need to define our ambition depending on what we want to achieve. The highest level of ambition is co-creation. So we get together and we co-create standard in something that is needed. For example, with UNDP, the United Nations, we just co-created a standard on SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. Number two, harmonization. We have our standards, you have your standards. Let's combine them and come up with a single document. Just one example we have discussed in the past period, emissions, how to measure emissions, how do we combine, for example, the efforts of GHGP with ISO standard and to make it something meaningful to everyone. Number three, mutual recognition. I know you have that, it's good stuff. I don't need to do it again. So I refer to your standards. And number four, the minimum level, I would say, is interoperability, which is good but not great, because it's a good way to, live together and not to bother anyone, and we can, connect the dots. But it's a good level of collaboration, but I think we can go even beyond.
Great, thank you. Let me move over to Jean-Marie. As I said, Deputy Director General of WTO. Also for you, two challenges. The first one is how can we ensure that data and QI don't create new barriers to trade? And give a live example, I'm in the World Business Council for Sustainability. Outside of Europe, there's plenty of businesses who think that CSRD is a trade barrier, which, anyone will have their views on, but that's how it's perceived. So to that point, the second point is, how do we ensure that we have the right balance between climate action and fair trade? So my question to you is, how can trade rules and climate policies work together? And building off that, how can metrics and QI help avoid market fragmentation?
Thank you very much, moderator. Good morning to all. Thank you, Sergio, for your invitation. Thank you also. Before I come to the how, let me make a quick step back on the why. Trade is fully part of the fight against struggle against climate change. Why? Just because trade is going to operate like innovation. It's going to help select the best technologies because of competition and disseminate them all around. Now, how do climate action interfere with this? Climate action, in a nutshell, is going to be about increasing the cost of carbon or decreasing the cost of alternative to carbon. You may have different strategies on that. Some strategies are about pricing. And for instance, we already have 80 schemes of carbon pricing or carbon taxes in the world. Now, when you have a price, you need a quantity. Other than that, it's useless. And there comes the standards issue, which is absolutely central to all of this. And as Sergio said, the minimum level of cooperation is to find a way to find interoperability of the way you define quantity. Because if, for instance, we are working with the steel sector, if you find that one ton of steel has 1 ton of carbon in California and 1 ton of steel has 4 tons of carbon in Europe, or vice versa, this is just from the top of my head, then you have a problem. And in the WTO, we are used to deal with such type of regulatory intervention when it comes to tariff. Custom officers perfectly know how to do it. But if you don't know how much carbon you have, how are you going to apply your price to the goods which are there? Then you fragment trade, then you reduce the efficiency of climate change strategy, and then you don't get, it's documented by economists in a much more complex way, but if you fragment your trade, you won't achieve your climate objectives. So interoperability is the key. It has been identified by WTO members in many ways. They have opened forums complementary to the IFCMA or ICFMA. I don't always have a problem with the acronym. And they are there. It happens that we have a locus and a legal apparatus to deal with that under the form of what we call technically the TBT, Technical Barriers to Trade Committee. This committee comes with some sort of legal principles which are supposed to be implemented by all members, which are about don't discriminate when you elaborate your standards, be transparent, don't discriminate, try to base it on international standards, and this is where we dovetail, and we are totally complementary because the WTO is relying on international standards. So every time Sergio does his job, I'm happy because then my members know where they can refer to. If they don't have these international standards, then we ask them, please be based on scientific things. So this exists. The problem is that it was all designed in terms of after the fact. So you take a regulation, and after the fact you come to the WTO and you check whether it works or if it's compatible with my trade and all that. What we are facing today is a challenge of, can we move a little bit upstream? Can we preempt the proliferation of non-compatible standards? And this is a very, very, very tricky challenge. For instance, we are working, I was mentioning, with the steel sector, and this is a very innovative type of dialogue that we have with the steel industry. They already have in steel in the world more than 25 different standards on how to measure their carbon content. So we came with them and said, would you like to just converge, not in how...
The one thing that business does not need is multiple standards.
I agree.
Over to you, Jean-Marie. I'm going to ask you a question which I don't know if it's politically correct or not, but these are questions I get when I'm in the world. Recently I was in China. 500 Chinese business leaders in a room talking about sustainability, the transition, ISSB and the likes. The only thing the Chinese business leaders wanted to talk about is CBAM in Europe. I heard an official in China say that they think that is not compliant with WTO, but all the business leaders are beginning to prepare to use CBAM and to have the metrics to prove the carbon content of whatever they want to send to Europe. What is, if I may ask, what is your view on CBAM from a trade point of view?
Well, my first answer would be an anecdote from my trip to China, where I was visiting a green steel plant, and I asked a very French question. I'm French. Why don't you fear this proliferation of standards, of green steel standards? And the answer of the director of the plant was, we'll do what the customer wants. That was a very Chinese answer, I thought. So I think there is, yes, this concern, but there are already, the private sector is adapting to that. What do we think of CBAM? Well, this is for something that we as Secretariat of the WTO have no legal answer. We just know that the environment is fully recognized in the WTO rule book. The only thing is that you have to be proportionate, transparent, non-discriminatory, and that is what the EU claims to be. Now, if others do think that this is not the case, they have to discuss with the issue and fine-tune. Most of the time when you have environmental regulation, you can have WTO compatibility and modality. For instance, I had a discussion, there was a panel on biofuel, judging about the standards of the EU on biodiesel directive. They said this is 80% more or less okay with WTO. Some modalities need to be revised. So this is type of discussion that we are encouraging, because every time our members are trying to promote interoperability of their different systems, then the world trade is going better. Now, I'd like to pick up on the point of private sector, because I think it's very important. The Montreal Protocol is one of the standard setting of future governance, because it has been associating private sector. And we are here in a little bit of an uncharted territories, where if we want to be efficient on this interoperability of standards, we need to have the private sector voice since the beginning. It's not when the problems arise and governments are fighting that we are going to solve that. So I think there is some sort of new governance model that needs to emerge, and the Montreal Protocol is probably a very pioneering treaty that we need to work on.
So that's a fantastic opening for a new question, because business has relatively limited headspace. So I think most businesses will agree with you. We need to comply with standards, need to be interoperable, need to align with ISSB or whatever disclosure framework the world will pick on. But where does business go? Is it the OECD, ISO, WTO? Where do we go? And how can we have one conversation instead of numerous?
Well, I think, they should go everywhere, because, they will get the right perspective everywhere. And on our part, we have involved businesses in our reflections on the measurement of carbon intensity from the beginning. We've done it at the level of single, individual businesses to in a first occasion. We will do it in December. We're going to have one of our, annual or biannual plenary meetings, and we will try to have the perspective of business associations this time. But we have done it. But I don't think, I would agree with Sergio, that there is a need of cooperating from the beginning in all these different organizations.
Sergio, where do we go?
To ISO, of course. No, well, I think, first of all, the homework is on our side, on the standard maker side, to connect the dots. In different level of ambition, as I mentioned, all the way from co-creation to interoperability, we connect the dots as much as possible. And then on the business side, participating in the standard making, I think, is of the essence, because you will make sense of what is being created. And then in the implementation side, we could have this kind of plug-and-play platform where we connect the various existing frameworks.
Well, two answers. First, go to the market. because there will be technological solutions which are going to solve half of the problem. For instance, there is a lot of development on what they call digital passports. So these are going to be digital tools where you may inject your data and then you will measure against any standards and it will facilitate trade. I'm not saying it's 100% of the solution, but it will be part of the solution. And then you know that when the standards compete, some of them will inevitably be selected as dominant standards, and then they will make the market. Now, in terms of institutions, I would say first go to your government and tell them this is important. This has to be solved. Of course, for standard setting organization, not the WTO, I don't think. Sorry, which are going to tell you this is the regulation to do that. But the government can then interact in intergovernmental organizations such as the WTO if they are considering prioritizing this issue in the discussion. And I think today it's important to raise their level of.
So then there is a lot of momentum building to create a mandatory disclosure for business. So we should not do the voluntary thing anymore. We just tell people which are the disclosures on carbon or climate action that you need to comply with. CSRD is building in Europe. ISSB is trying to do similar in other parts of the world. How can we make sure that the world of your world, the world of standards, interoperability, is moving fast enough to be ready when that mandatory framework is in place? Because we cannot lose time. Maybe start with you, Sergio.
Yeah, I think we need to start now because that is the direction of travel, that for sure. And we have already engaged with ISSB. We have a good understanding with them that we launched that collaboration last year in Dubai. And there is good collaboration in EFRAG and SEN, which is the regional standard organization for Europe. So the earlier, the better, because they will provide the what, and it's going to be probably soon enough a mandatory what, and we can help with the how.
All right, the closing minutes. I want to make a deal with all three of you. We're going to have this panel again in Belém next year, right? Because the whole world, I mean, the expectations on what the world will achieve at COP30 are skyrocketing. So I need a really ambitious answer from all of you. If we're back here 12 months from now, what will we have done to close the implementation gap, together, individual, with help of others? What is the ambition that you would have for 12 months from now, COP30? And then I invite all the audience to come back, and then we're going to hold them accountable. All right, who wants to go first?
Well, I can tell you what, I mean, in the space of measuring the carbon content of goods and products, we have, in conversation with our, with our delegates, so with our members and non-members, we have already identified where we want to go, from this recollection of issues, of challenges, and identification of possible avenues for solution. We would like certainly to actually explore, work on a database for default values. We would propose to our members to approve, the prospects of working on that, working on the measurement, the issues, how to solve the technical issues that arise in measuring the carbon content along global supply chain, which is a very complicated, which is something that requires. And third, we would like to actually work on the interoperability of monitoring, reporting, and verification systems.
Thank you, Sergio.
Let's dream.
Let's go big.
Number one, my team will kill me, a fully approved international standard on net zero. Number one. And number two, a couple of additional meaningful strategic partnership with other standard makers, signed and ready to operate.
Okay. Tell me a bit more about the standard for net zero, because I saw your team shake when you did it. So what's the ambition in that?
2 years ago, we launched the lowest level of consensus deliverable, which is called an international workshop agreement. That was wonderful because we had 1,000 people participating from 100 countries. But now we need to transform it in a fully fledged international standard. And that takes a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of discussions. But we can make it, and I think we will.
And does that include thorny issues like offsetting, insetting, what is acceptable, what the definitions of those are?
I don't think it goes that far. It's very good in terms of providing clarity in terms of definition, and then supporting the journey of all kind of organizations to go from commitment to actual action and implementation.
Cool. Well, ISO team, you know what you need to do. Jean-Marie, really ambitious. What are you going to deliver 12 months from now when you're back on this panel?
Well, for the model, last year I told you about the steel sector. We had the conversation, we started with the steel sector and said, we want to have this conversation on green steel standards principle. This year we are coming, this is mainly industry-led. We are coming tomorrow, actually there will be an event at the Trade and Investment House Pavilion. You are all welcome. The industry is coming with deliverables. They find a first step of common ground on their standards on reporting. In the WTO, our members more or less say the same. We want to have the conversation on interoperability through a lot of procedural channels that they love desiccating, and I share that for this discussion. We want to see next year what is the outcome. It does not need to be a revolution. It needs to be a progress toward concrete achievements of this interoperability. And that is my dream.
Great. As the person that introduced us, is there anything that makes you happy when you listen to this?
Absolutely, because I see the dream for next year. And I'm really wishing that we have a solid ground for metrics, for discussing, for interoperability, for everything next year. And as a representative of a government, it's very essential that we can have a sort of unified way to understand ourselves and to quantify and qualify the progress on mitigation and for which purpose will be used the financing we are mobilizing, be the official side, I mean the public one, and the private one. So I wish you a good solid work, and some people are afraid in that room, but no problem. I will be ready to give you some flowers for felicitation next year.
All right, I promised you a rock star panel. Fabricia, Sergio, Jean-Marie, thank you very much. Give them a hand of applause, and see you next year.
On behalf of these participants, to you, to everybody, discuss was very interesting. We listened from A to Z very seriously, and then I wish to everybody, we are going to the end of 2024 years. Happy New Year to your country. Our best regards to your family, to your country. Never wars, always peace, never climate catastrophe.